Again, thanks for the opportunity. What I'll be going through is a live demo. So we connected to the ECX appliance. Just let me refresh our VPN connection. You might have to go back.
So you're able to scale multiple instances of the application running at different sites, sharing the metadata?
So right now in the GA release, it's a single appliance, but the Docker model and we'll be going through some of the architecture is to build a scale-out model to shard the database so we can have multiple instances and have a common UI for searching and doing workflows across these multiple instances.
So and the reason I explicitly ask about that is if I use this in any way for some type of DR and I'm using it on the same physical infrastructure and that infrastructure goes down for indexing, great, now I can't do recovery, I can't bring back workflows, I'm dead in the water completely across the board. But if everything's working, which is the normal state, then everything's working, in which case I'm not using it for that use case. And that's the reason I ask.
No, you definitely do. The availability is based on the VMware, and the Docker allows us shard, and MongoDB has a very good replication. But what we're going to do that in the architecture section too, because that's a big piece of this. Is Docker gives us a lot of that stuff very easily, and you'll see it in the next release, which is a May release.
Okay, and because they were still getting the stuff ready, I mean, that was one of my questions I built up while we were going through before. And
some of it is if you think of the architecture that we built, it's kind of how you'd build it and use some of these components that are, why would we redo a MongoDB, right?
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
All yours.
All right. So I start off in the plan page. So where I am is our ECX copy data management platform. Like Ed mentioned before, it's a virtual appliance that deploys in less than 15 minutes. It comes prepackaged with all the software. So all you're doing is going into web browser, pointing to the portal, and it shows up all the operations that you can perform. In the plan, we have 4 sections. The first one on the left-hand side is build a baseline of what you have in your environment. It captures high-level and low-level information, pretty much all about your storage, virtual infrastructure, captures aggregates, LUNs, etc., and also goes into metadata information about the files. So it builds a baseline of what you have and how we can build more copies and reuse them. The copy data is streamlining the copy creation from a storage layer as well as a virtualization layer. So you can create snapshots, you can create replica copies, backup copies, etc., and use those copies in the use data. So now that you have these copies, these application consistent copies, how do you leverage them? Build test environments, build DR environments, or bring up data in the cloud. And finally, there's the analyze data. Because we collect rich metadata information for all these objects, we can now run analytics. And the analytics are different types, from a storage level, virtualization level, protection level. And we'll cover each one of these in the demo. The first step is the configure page. The configure page is the first step because this is how you register the resources. We have a provider model. For the storage, there's a NetApp, the NetApp provider model where you register agentlessly your controllers. It's a one-time registration process. All we need to do is right-click and select the resource. We'll add the controller, and the same thing for VMware. We can add it at a vCenter level or ESX level. And once it's registered, we can do some high-level querying, find out all the different containers involved. So if I click on it, it shows me details about the container itself, the volumes or the LUNs, how much data is used, how many files are already available. So you get an idea of what's in the storage, so you can do multiple operations based on it. The configure tab, like I mentioned before, is your registration component. And once the data is registered, you can now go back to plan and start creating the orchestration layer for it. I'm going to select or go through a process of creating a VMware copy workflow. And I'll explain the storage level layer as well, but it is similar to the VMware workflow. What we tried to do with ECX is kind of create an abstraction layer. So the workflow will be similar for virtualization, will be similar for storage, and irrespective of the different type of providers or that you register in the environment. On the copy data policy or the workflow, you'll see the first step is selecting the source. What do you want to create a copy for? And we have a site-based model. So you would see different sites. Here I have the California site, New Jersey site, and underneath each of them, it shows the virtual hypervisor that is registered. When I expand, it's going to show me all the data centers, all the folders and the VMs that are part of that New Jersey site. And the view can be changed between a VM and template view to show individual virtual machine, or data store view that will capture all the virtual machines part of the data store level. So you can do it at 2 different levels. I've selected the VM and template view, and when I expand any of these, it shows me all the virtual machines that are part of it. I can either pick it at individual VM level or capture it at an entire folder level. So any new VMs that are created, it'll automatically capture as part of the workflow. Now that you've selected the source, the next step is I want to create a copy. I want to create a local in-place snapshot, and when you select it, here are the options. How long do you have a retention policy for it? You can select a 90-day, 30-day, and there's a trigger. How frequently do you want to run it? This can be daily.
And this is a VMware snapshot that we're making.
Yeah. So
NetApp snapshot.
So this is a VMware consistent NetApp storage snapshot. So
VMware consistent NetApp storage.
Wait, now I'm confused.
The orchestration level is ECX automatically identifies the underlying storage. So it works public APIs, contacts VMware, takes an app consistent snapshot, and then creates a storage snapshot, releases the VMware snapshot. And when you schedule the policy, there's an extra option to specify that exact question. So I can create VM consistent snapshot for all the VMs, make it application consistent for specific VMs.
Whoa.
Sorry.
Create VM application consistent snapshots for all the VMs?
There's an option. So these are radio.
You're not trying to quiesce all those VMs simultaneously. You're doing that sequentially, right?
Right. It'll be sequential, and that's where we have the option.
Okay.
So you have to have the option for the reason you guys know, right? So gravity still applies.
Yeah,
right?
for a second there, it looked like you guys invented anti-gravity, and I was just wanted to, if you did, I wanted to make sure, because then the engineers get a Nobel Prize, and it gets to sell another company.
That'll be the next release. So
you understand the mapping of the data stores to VMs and all that stuff. And
that's where the powerful catalog comes into picture, right? So when we do the high-level catalog, we map out where the VM is sitting on, the data store, the underlying volume, and the underlying aggregate. So everything is mapped out. Exactly.
Yeah, depending.
And your support for vvols and all that stuff is coming, or how does that play out in this game?
So it gets more powerful, right? A lot more objects, which is our model's good for a lot of objects.
Right.
That's the future. That's not in the current product, just to be.
Yeah, it also gets a lot more efficient, because you're gathering detritus from all, if I take application consistent snapshots sequentially of 10 VMs in a data store, each one of them has all the changes of all the other VMs in that data store that I didn't want.
Well, and that gets to the point that I was wondering is you've got keep snapshots 90 days. That's great. Hey, I'm still using some of those snapshots for one of those virtual machines in there, therefore I now have to keep all of the snapshots indefinitely until I'm completely done. And then how does it actually purge out those snapshots in 90 days? Is that a schedule? Is this thing keeping track of it? Because NetApp's not going to keep track of it. It's going to, you say, purge that thing out. Yeah, we'll get on that. And it'll never purge out, and you'll end up with a 2-year-old snapshot sitting out there.
So here's the thing. We do not change gravity, gentlemen, right? So
we're very
NetApp and VMware, and there's strengths and positives of every primary storage vendor, and then what you can do in VMware. We're doing it orchestrating that, but you're right.
So who's actually orchestrating these snapshot deletions?
The snapshot creation is orchestrated by ECX, and the purge operation is also done by ECX. So in this instance, it's keeping for 90 days. And every time a workflow runs, it'll check for all the snapshots that are out there that were created by ECX, and the retention. So if anything goes beyond the retention, it's going to clean them up.
So you integrate through WFA, is that?
We use direct storage APIs. So
like Zappy calls in the case of NetApp.
Exactly, there are Zappy calls.
Yeah, just to get back to your other use case where if somebody does create a clone and hold up that snapshot, then what we tell users to do is, don't do the test mode, but do the clone mode where we create new storage and it frees up.
Sure, but we were talking about users, so
yeah.
I can only go so far.
And that's where I'll show you some of the reporting or the analytics capabilities. That'll show overprotected and underprotected. It'll show you all the volumes that have more snapshots than you need. So you can set a threshold and say if it exceeds, alert me or send me a report that says all these volumes have more than 30 snapshots or 90 snapshots.
Yeah, although in the case of if it's taking a separate snapshot per virtual machine in order to ensure that it's, unless it's doing one, it's going to do a sequential individual and then it's going to do a quiesced kind of consistent shot for that. Or if I've got 10 VMs in there, is it going to be turned to 10 snapshots? Then when I go to do the snapshot cleanup, that's my concern and what the impact is going to be on the back end, et cetera.
That is a great question. So when we select, say for in this instance, I selected 4 VMs and a folder, right? So it's going to, the first operation is the Vmware operation where it's quiescing all the VMs based on the selection. And then the next operation is creating the snapshot at the storage level. So for one workflow, there'll be only one snapshot on the storage level, irrespective of the quiescing part is the VM snapshot piece. That'll be individual VM level, but the storage snapshot is just one snapshot for all the virtual machines that you've selected.
One snapshot per volume.
Per volume, exactly.
Because if it spans across multiple volumes, some applications, that's the kind of the approach I'm looking at it of, having run data centers with hundreds of NetApp arrays, I, on a regular basis, would find snapshots that were really, really old. And didn't we just go through this last month? Where are these things coming from? So these are real pain points. I want to make sure this is gonna help it and not exacerbate the situation.
And the reporting allows you to get to help that directly, but let's keep going.
Right, okay.
I think you're hitting the right piece, right? So
again, the first step is creating the local snapshot, and then we can add additional workflows to say, what do you want to do next? The next thing is you can add a vault. In NetApp terms, vault is a backup for different retention, and mirror is a replica to DR site. So you can select vault, and you pick the site where you want the vault copy. Typically, vault is done to a secondary destination, but in the same site. So let me select New Jersey, select the storage, and in CDOT or in the NetApp CDOT environment, you have a concept called storage virtual machines. It's a virtual storage container within a physical container. We select it at that level, and the storage or the volume creation is done automatically. So ECX, you just select the container or the virtual controller that you want to keep this vault or mirror, and we'll automatically identify the best aggregate based on storage, the retention policy, how frequently you want to do it, and it'll automatically create a volume, size it, auto grow, auto shrink, depending on the frequency.
So looking at the GUI here, you have done a very good job integrating with NetApp. Okay. But tomorrow you want to integrate with HES, with the naming is different, the way they take snapshots is different. So from the sysadmin point of view, he will have different ways to take snapshots. You are not the common layer to doing everything. So because I have to know how all this storage work.
Well, we're definitely not going to let you do snapshot. Well, not because we don't. We're not doing the replication snapshot. So if you go to the provider model and you have an Hitachi environment, when we have Hitachi supported.
Yeah, but things like Snap Vault, Snap Mirrors, those things are different depending on which vendor you're talking about, right?
Yeah, but the problem is, if you are a developer or you are in a huge environment, you don't care about storage because you are a developer, and you want a copy of that database to do some testing, some dev. When you will have the role-based and whatever. And so it's a problem because I don't have a clue of the story on how the storage works. I know that there are some, I can get a copy of that data, but
I can't show you it because we don't have it done yet, but if you go back to the start menu, right? Don't do that. If you go back to the plan thing, basically you saw, let's do a VMware flow, let's do a storage flow. It's going to just show you what you have, and we have to show you the next release, which would have a next platform, and then you'll see how well we did it. But when you go down to it, we can have a different presentation here. It's the same workflow, notification, submit, but you're right, on the right-hand side, there's different, every platform, even on NetApp, different retention, they have different command lines and APIs that we have to change this to make sure the provider model works. So, well, we have to show it to you, but we don't have it to show it to you right now. But you'll see it in the next release, where you'll see the next platform, and it will be different. And take everything you can do. The concept is whatever you can do in the command line or API, you should be able to do from our environment.
So you'll retain the nomenclature of the vendor, so that way it looks straightforward, which is the key. It looks straightforward to the person who's managing it. Like, oh, okay, that's a Snap, that's a this.
Until you get into a heterogeneous environment where you kind of need to invent your own vendor-neutral language.
Well, not just heterogeneous environments, but also environments where we're servicing developers who are asking for more and more power. Yep. So we give them, to the point, bare metal equipment, and they want to make a copy of their Oracle database. Mm-hmm. This is a very VM-centric view of providing snapshots. How do I serve the guy who has to mount LUNs or the file systems for HPUX, but I don't want him making another copy of the data to do so.
So,
yeah, but it's a DBA. He's going to dump it anyway because he doesn't trust your backup app.
Well, I mean, to that point, this is heavily invested in NetApp. So I give the power through SM-SQL, SME, SMSE, SMO, etc., to let the end app owner be able to do their backups, do their reinstantiation. Would this be exposed down to them to be able to do that? Or do they log in through an interface and they're able to do these things, or is this really for the backup admin, for the storage admin?
So my answer to it is we see the users using it are the infrastructure people. Either we see VMware guys, we see storage guys, and yes, only NetApp now, because guess what, we support NetApp.
Yeah, no, and that's why the focus is
they have to start somewhere.
They have each
we're
of
looking
those,
forward to seeing you expand to other platforms.
Because I mean, they have app owner accessible.
We don't do a provider, right? So we are focusing on the enterprise infrastructure arrays, not on file system, because I think that's where the biggest pain on the copy data management piece is. And then, we can also update you guys once we get the new code out. It would be interesting your feedback, but that's good 60 days away. But it is more for the power for the admin. You know, the idea of someone saying, "Hey, I need X, Y, Z." They go click, click, click. They give it, and they're on to the day job. Yep. Or, "Hey, the call center can now do all this exception-based reporting. They're finding it, and I know I have a snapshot." That gives the power back to the storage or the VMware admin. So understand where it's focused on. But it doesn't stop you from doing things for the end user. We'll identify it in the background. So we'll show all the snap copy managers. We'll show you exactly where they are, how many recover points. So we see it all. So it doesn't hurt you in those cases.
And part of this is it automates a lot of things, like creating the storage container for the secondary location. So these are some things that the admin does not have to do. Typically, the admin has to create a secondary repository before he has to coordinate all these workflows. This automates a lot of these and does auto grow or auto shrink depending on the retentions, etc. And there are triggers as well. So typically, when you create these workflows, you set up, I want to run a local snapshot, and once it completes, after the previous operation completes, trigger a secondary location, or you can set up separate schedules for them as well. And again, you can create advanced workflows. So in this, it was a simple one: create a snapshot, create a vault. What if I want to replicate to a DR site? I have a local copy, I have a local secondary copy. I can move it to my DR or move it to the cloud. Same operation. Select the site. I can pick a storage on the secondary or the DR site where you will be reusing these workflows to create fenced environment, create test environments or DR environments. Select that, and again, the same thing goes for the DR sites as well. It'll auto-provision storage, and it'll use those provisioned volume for storing the copies.
Will that build our SnapMirror relationships for us and tear it down if necessary?
Exactly. So it'll create, so the vault and the mirror, it'll create, ECX will create the new relationship.
Okay. So it'll build snap vaults as well,
yes,
if necessary, based upon whatever you define. Okay, cool.
Yes.
That's a pain just itself, trying to set that up, so.
We got that feedback. I mean, that's some of the feedback we're getting is I could do that myself, but hell, I don't want to.
I don't want to.
Or I could do that, but then at least the call center can manage it.
You say I can just click, we're done.
Right?
Well, I can.
We're getting strange feedback we weren't anticipating, but the storage guys are like, finally, I need something, right?
I can do that, but the 27 guys who work for me can't.
Exactly.
So it always comes back to me, right?
Yeah.
So in the last screen, there were options for trigger type events.
Right.
So can you show me the events which are available?
Sure. So the events are either by based on previous operations or by schedule. So on the event is run after parent.
Okay, only one.
On the schedule operation, it's pick a date and time and the frequency.
Okay.
And I can create different trees, right? So I created a simple one, snapshot, vault, and mirror. I can create another snapshot, set a different frequency or a different retention policy. So I want to run at the end of the month. I have to want to keep a local copy, but keep it for a longer retention. And that copy, I want to send it to the cloud.
Is all this just through the GUI, or is there a API as well?
So everything is driven through REST API. Even the interface is making REST API calls to the appliance. So everything you see in the UI can be done through REST calls.
Okay.
Okay.
That's an important one.
Oh yeah, no, especially
Very important one.
when we start talking about on demand. It's like I'm about to upgrade Oracle. I'm taking a snapshot because God knows what's going to happen when I update Oracle.
Yep.
Right. And imagine doing these all by, if you want to write scripts or something like that. This advanced policy is going to take a long time, and you have to manage these scripts. So the user interface tries to make it as simple and straightforward as possible.
Right, but if I define a series of jobs as events with dependencies, I can then make one REST call to trigger the whole chain.
Exactly. That's where I was going with these. The REST calls makes it even easier to drive it from a different user perspective.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of let me design what I'm doing in the GUI and then let me execute it from the API. That way I don't have to memorize the commands.
And our REST APIs are JSON based, they're not XML, easy to use.
Right. So once the policy runs, I want to quickly show you all the job monitoring. So you have every instance of it. It shows the pending tasks, all the completed ones. And when I mouse over it, it's going to show me the actual sequence that was created. And it identifies it. And when I click on it, it gives me more history. What was the last run? Did it complete? Which part of it completed successfully? Was there any partial failure? History. So everything is auditable. And the exception reporting is well built out. So end users can just take a look at it and see what has completed, what's not. And like I mentioned before, each thing is split out into tasks. So there's a resolution, there's a snapshotting operation, which is the quiescing mode, and then there's a vault operation. So each one is completely laid out, separated out into tasks. So when you look at the job monitor, it's easy to follow, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist to identify what is going on in the job. Let me switch back to the policies, and what we saw earlier is a copy creation policy, which is creating a workflow. For NetApp or from a storage layer, it is similar. So to quickly show you, it's the same layout. We want to make sure, irrespective of the provider you choose or the hypervisor you choose, the sequence and creation process is the same. So it makes the UI more easy for different type of operations. Now that we've created these copies, we've created the replicas, we've put it in a different site. How do you reuse it? This brings out the exclusive feature we provide in copy data management. So all these different copies, you can leverage it for different use cases. And each one is instant, so you can quickly bring this up or tear it down, depending on the functionality. So instant access, if you want to mount a database, you want to quickly mount it, run some queries, take it off, you can do instant access. It's done at a drive level. Instant virtualization creates single VMs or multiple VMs, which can be brought up in a sequence in test mode or clone mode or production mode, right? So the options are, you select the source. This is a VMs that you want to bring it up in your environment. So let me expand New Jersey. SE demo vCenter. Here you will see all the copies that were created using the copy workflow. When I expand production, it shows me all the VMs that are part of it. Let me expand development. Let's pick a bunch of VMs, right? And here's where the earlier question, can you order it? Can you provide it in a sequence? We can select the AD server, bring it up, and say, this is the first server I want to bring up. And then I want to bring up my Exchange server. So you can provide a sequence, so if you're running it in a DR mode, and each of these are repeatable, you can provide a schedule. Typically what our customers do is they run nightly DRs and have this as a schedule operation to bring up 4 of their critical servers or 20 servers, most of the critical in their DR mode. It's up and running in a fence network, and in case of a disaster on the production, all you're doing is switching the network to bring it up in production mode. Your VMs are already up and running.
Okay.
Where do I put in how long it has to wait before it starts up the next server? Because when is it going to start it up? After 1 minute, or what's the?
What is it? There are actually some default options that are not exposed in the UI right now, but you can set these options to when you want to power on and the timeouts between the power ons.
Is that a universal setting, or is that a per template?
It is per workflow. So it will be for this workflow. I named the workflow a certain name. It will be for those workflows.
And the reason you're asking universal versus per is because I've been in that situation of this one machine takes forever, or don't wait for it to even show up. Sometimes I'm not sure if your workflow is saying waiting for VMware tools to start. Sometimes I'm like, yes, powered on, and I don't care after that point. Come up whenever you do come up, but I don't want to sit here and have my test of this DR take an hour just as it's waiting for each thing to go in sequence. When Active Directory, good. Exchange, good. The rest of it, just come up in your own time, and I only then care about my databases or certain instantiated things. So some level of granularity would be key.
Although I really
some of the options. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Although I really want to be able to say, start this server, and then the next step could be timed, or it could be on the success of this script.
Yes.
That makes an LDAP. I don't want you to start the Exchange till an LDAP query to the Active Directory was successful. I don't care if the server started. I want the service actually running.
Detailed custom workflow around the
Detailed
whole
custom
application, not just the.
Yeah, well, I just in between each for each dependency, I want to be able to say, don't wait time, wait for positive response from this script.
Step-based actions.
Yeah.
Or even run a workflow that's external to this.
Well, that would be a
call.
Custom,
right.
I need to call
so you'd call that script and you get an acknowledgement.
Right. Some PostScript or pre-script process. Some of the things that you mentioned are in the options. I'll go to it.
Yeah.
When we go through these workflow, it has to do some validation checks. So I should directly go into the options.
Yeah.
Let me select the other options before I go into the options menu.
Yeah, just a GUI point.
Right.
I would rather than have here's a job and that job has pre and postscript like NetBackup would have. Yeah. I want the tree to display job dependency event. Yeah. So that on one screen I can see what that is. I don't have to dive down into each one and go, did that dependency get derived right?
Yeah, I mean, and mind you, it's not SRM or vRealize Recovery Manager, as we're going to recoin it, but the same kind of functionality is present in there as well, to get a sense of, hey, what's our workflow actions and step going to be? And mind you, it's horrible in there. It's like, pre-job, that thing's not going to work. Post-job, because it's not a backup product,
right?
And it's trying to act like the backup products and NetBackup, et cetera, have in the past. Continue though. Go through the options so we can get the options.
If I don't select the site, it's going to throw me because we validate for every step. First I selected the source as to what I want to bring up, and the next I choose the site. Where are these copies residing on? Which copy do I want to reuse? So the New Jersey is a local copy. CA is a replica copy, and I can either.
That's even if you didn't actually create the copies, you would go out and try to identify where the copies are, even if you weren't the precursor or progenitor of the copy, or these are only because you copy these directly.
The use workflows shows the copies that that were created using the copy workflows.
You do catalog what's out there when you get the first installation, but you're not necessarily going out there and recataloging periodically.
No, we are cataloging, but you're so. I'll let you answer it.
Good. Yeah. So we are cataloging the other copies as well. So we know and we know the location. But for this reuse policy, we are using the copies that were created using ECX.
For the demo.
Yeah.
For that is in the GA product.
Okay.
Yeah, so we do have something in the backlog to basically allow users to reuse catalog policies and not necessarily ones that we drove. So that's something we've got a request for already. Yeah.
All right.
A good point.
Okay. Once you select the site, you can select the version as well. So there could be different catalog copies or different timestamps. So it let you pick the timestamp. Typically, in a DR mode, it's always the latest snapshot, and when you schedule it, it always picks the latest snapshot or the latest copy. So when you run in DR mode, you always on the latest. Okay. Select next. Here are the options. Some of the options are, like you had mentioned before, what happens if there is a source failure. One of the things fail, what do you want to do? Do you want to continue with the next source or just skip it? So some of these options you can select. And also you can select the mode of operation. We have 3 modes, the test mode, production mode, and clone mode. Test is bring up your test environment, and it uses these options. Production is, in test and clone, it uses a cloned version of your snapshot. So what I mean by that, it doesn't move the data, it just brings up an instant copy from the snapshot. In production mode, the first step is still the clone. It creates a clone, brings it up, but in the background it's doing a data copy to your production data stores or your production volumes. And the clone, it's slightly different from test and production in the sense that you use the same copy to bring it for different use cases. For example, you have your latest SQL database, right? So you want to use that for running SQL queries. So you use the clone, bring it up. But you want to use the same copy, the same snapshot instance to do Microsoft updates, right? So you can use the same copy, bring it up multiple times, but you run different policies or different test modes on it. So we have different options for all these use cases.
Can you elaborate on what, quote, on failure means in the case of the continue or automatically clean up, etc.? What is failure defined as? Unable to meet criteria in a defined time window that we don't exactly know how long it is. You know, what are the criteria for failure so that way we know, hey, let's make it get to failure faster so we can move to the next step in some cases.
A simple instance would be it wouldn't power it on or it wouldn't find
it. Wouldn't boot because it was a crash consistent copy, and for whatever reason the disk became corrupt because it was already there. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Something like those. So when every time a VM is brought up, or even at the storage level, a storage is brought up, it runs checks to ensure that the VM is up and running. Has it found the right network that you chose, and did it find the right network? For some point, and any of these steps fail, it's considered as a failure.
Okay.
And if any of these steps fail, it doesn't make sense to bring on the next one. Sometimes it would, sometimes it doesn't, and that's why we have these options.
Gotcha.
Did that answer the question?
No, that works, yeah.
So this power down running instance before recovery, is that talking about the production instance?
That is talking about the production instance. So typically in the production mode, it's running off of a clone first, and it's doing background data transfer, so the users are continuing to use the data. But if for some reason you want to power it off and then do the data transfer in the background, you have the option.
Okay.
Next step is the notification. You can send emails, and there's a schedule option. Either start the job now or schedule it at a different time. So this is the repeatable process. You can set up daily or hourly schedules, especially in the DR mode or test mode. You want to bring up your Oracle database every week to run reporting on it instead of running in production. Bring it in a test fence network and run it off of those. Or you want to test daily DRs, weekly DRs. Typically, DRs are done once a year, and you hope it works. In this case, it makes it more auditable and easy to reproduce. And the final step is save it as a policy and click go. One
One last part on that. If you go to submit, does it show you what you did as opposed to saying summary and then no data? Because I see that a lot from products.
You show the.
It does, and actually there are other locations where it builds out the entire workflow as well.
Well, no, I'm just wondering, when you click on submit, does it actually show you what you were just about to do?
Yeah.
Look up that. Beautiful. That's what I was looking for.
Yep. I just had to select a few.
Sure. No, absolutely.
Ensure there's a validation going through. Yes.
So you look at this as a replacement for backup, or
one use case. The biggest use case here is showing you what you have, which would get to analyze and what. The second use case is to use these in a more flexible, easier way, using the snapshots you have for these other use cases. And then third is, we do see a small portion of the, IDC and same thing. 10% of the organizations are saying, I can't do classic back anymore. I have these application consistent snapshots. What we do is we give them a way to do compliance reporting, exception-based reporting, and then also the automation to recover it. So if people are doing it, I don't think it's, I'm not saying it's a replacement for backup in a general purpose way. The other thing is, tape's not dead. Just make it clear, even if you did this for backup, you can use tape for archive, at least weekly basis, right? But that would be off the remote side by a scheduled, here's a snapshot, let's go and put it on tape. So I'm not saying it's a broad, but we do see it happening pretty quickly. IDC thing is going from 10% to 25% next year, which is quick for IDC.
Well, and the fact that you are, at this time, dependent upon NetApp, it's not like it's changing the fact that NetApp's doing snapshots. And if you use it as a backup orchestrator, it's certainly a Trojan horse to give you an ability that's really being run by command lines and horrible web interfaces today, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've been arguing about whether snapshots can serve as backups,
and we know the answer to that is no.
But I mean, a snap vault,
but
snap mirror,
if they're replicated and retained and cataloged,
cataloged.
Catalog's here.
Without the catalog, you can't
it's here.
do it.
Yeah.
No. I have taken way too many phone calls from somebody in accounting where Mary, who does the end of quarter close, is on maternity leave, and they don't actually close the quarter in SAP, it's an Excel spreadsheet, and we can't find the Excel spreadsheet, and we know it was here, and you got to search through the net backup catalogs for hours to find the 10 spreadsheets. The one they're looking for is one of them, and restore them all, and then point them to that folder and go, here, it's one of those, thanks a lot.
That might be the next where we go, so the visibility on this demo. So but anyway, so I just want to be clear, right? So I think backup's a little bit religion, right? But it's coming to a point where you can't do the old way of doing it. And to put a resilient in front of tape, to operational recovery, tape's not really good for it. Disk is much better for it. But instead of putting a whole complex layer of disks, replicated remote sites like a data domain in front of tape just for the sole purpose of a slow recovery doesn't make a lot of sense. So the combination of snapshots with tape is for leading edge clients that get it, is something that they're looking at very aggressively. I just don't want to say it's a general purpose, you have to really think through the catalog, and the reporting is critical to it.
Yeah, because the backup space really is let's choose the least worst option, because,
Yeah. And people typically run in parallel, right? So they'll show that they can do all operational recoveries from their snapshots first. They can show they have the same email report backup, what didn't back up last night. Hey, what snapshots didn't happen last night? They fix it every night, so the auditors go, I have a process at which I'm doing this every day, when it's going well, and then all operational recoveries, and then they have to get used to that. And then the next time they upgrade data domain, they probably don't rip it out, but they maybe do less, right?
Not to mention,
does that make sense? I mean, it's not like this overnight.
Yeah. Not to mention that they're replicating their snapshots, and then they're making a backup, and then they're replicating the backup, and so they're paying another $50,000 a month for more bandwidth, so they can move the same data over the same link twice.
Yeah, at least they're not paying for the destination. But
it doesn't replace it, but it reduces the dependency on backups, right? So you ensure that with the catalog, you have a solid copy that you can reuse, and especially if you can do DR modes, that is validation enough that you can use your data.
To coin the kickoff, basically, of how you started this, is 60% of your snapshot and your space is being wasted. So this gives you the ability to use that space that you're wasting today.
Bingo.
Exactly.
Bingo.
And that brings us to our search, our catalog, right? So we catalog the data at high level as well as at some file level. So these are the objects that you can search for. Let me quickly show you. These are NetApp. You can search for recovery objects. You can search for VMware objects. A quick search. Let me look for a small file.
So this would be like your Excel spreadsheet they're looking for.
Right, I'm looking for a text file or any file for that matter. It shows me all the instances, and when I click on any one of those, it'll also show me the different versions and the number of copies that you had.
But that's for if we're protecting SMB type data, it's not cracking open a VM and indexing the data inside of there.
Correct.
It's not looking at the content, it's looking at the metadata information of these files.
Well, no, I think it's actually looking at the file name. This search is based upon the file name, right?
This search is on any of the names.
If it was an NFS or a CIFS or SMB, we won't get into contention around the terminology of CIFS, but if it were an NFS or an SMB type file, yes, it would absolutely show up here. But if it resided within a VM, the answer to that question is no.
No.
Not currently. No.
So if my file, well, I wouldn't do this in a NetApp environment, but outside a NetApp environment,
people
if
still
my file services were my personal directories in a NetApp environment are very rarely going to be served by a virtual Windows server because it's a NetApp environment.
It shouldn't be.
But if I have block storage on the back end, I certainly would do that a lot, and then I really do need you to crack open the VMDK and index all of the internal files.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, but it's a standard part of vStorage API for data protection.
Sure.
I just want to make sure we don't do that currently in the production. Right. A lot of requests, especially the .vmdk files, and there's tools that we can use and we've used in our backup products, but I just want to make sure we're being clear.
Yeah, we're good.
But if we're looking at, these copies eliminate the need to make backup copies, I need that detail.
And that gets you to that future part of billions of objects easily being managed by the Docker instances. I could see that. Yeah, I could see the multiple billions.
It is easy to visualize, right? Once you start cataloging, you identify that there's so much data sitting there and multiple copies. So it not only we identify the local copies, but it also shows if it's part of a replica. So if this file belongs to a replicated snapshot, it'll show that you have a copy in a secondary location and provide you the file links for those so you can access these files that are located in all these different controllers and all these different locations in your enterprise. And you can do some advanced search as well. So you can look for star.text, which is greater than 10 meg. And you can get creative with these search. And each of these search results can be exported as CSV files or PDFs or text files, depending on what you want to use this for. And because we collect all this metadata information, we can run analytics for these. So and analytics is in our reports tab, and it's based on file analytics for file usage, storage analytics, utilization reports, storage protection, and compliance reports. A typical one is file by age. Now we have data of all these files. Show me how old these files are these being accessed or modified? And I can set criterions for this. There are some basic parameters that we can set. Do you want to run it for all the storage containers you have? Do you want to choose it for particular volumes? And what size, what extensions of files do you want to run? And select run. And at the end of it, you can export these file lists to a separate container, either as JSON or in a CSV format. What this does is, from the metadata information that we collected, analyzes it and shows you these are all the files that you have in your enterprise, and how much is the total capacity for all these files, how old are these. So for example, in this case, anything over 180 days, there are about 7 terabytes of data that's older than, that's not been accessed in over 180 days. So in larger enterprises, we see almost 60 to 75% of the data that has not been accessed in over a year. This gives you a general idea of how much files are in your environment. Are they frequently being accessed? Can these be moved to cheaper storage? Another one is, say, application-based protection status. In NetApp's case, it's the NetApp Snap Manager report. Based on our catalog, we automatically identify the application, the server that the applications contained, the number of recovery points, and by the way, has it been replicated or not? Right? So you not only know your critical servers, the applications that is running, and this also allows you to ensure that you're compliant. These are your most critical servers. Do you have enough protection points? And for example, if you see the SQL server has only 1 copy, and not only that, doesn't have a DR. So these reports quickly show you that you have enough protection copies and you're insured for disaster recovery. And these are automatically done from the storage, just from looking at the snapshot. We also have some overprotected and underprotected status. So let me show you an underprotected volume. So what we mean by this is, do you have enough snapshot copies on your data? Not only your mission critical applications, but in general, all the storage volumes. So it runs a report and shows you that there are volumes in your enterprise that have not met your protection policies. So if you have a 30-day retention minimum for your critical, it shows you that these are the volumes that are underprotected and by 10 count. So as a storage admin or a backup admin, you can ensure that it is compliant. And the storage analytics or the analytics itself extends to beyond just data protection, compliance. It also goes to virtualization. One of the frequently used reports is VM Sprawl. What this is it identifies all the virtual machines that are sitting in your environment in a powered off or a suspended state. So it shows you the storage utilized by some of these VMs that are just sitting there, created maybe for a test environment and not cleaned up, right? So it shows you these are the VMs, these are the vCenters, this is the provision storage. You can save 2 or 3 terabytes of storage by just looking at these powered off instances which are not even being used. Right?
It's been mentioned before, but this is only for, you can only download this and send it to someone else? Or can I make sure a manager can log into this and watch all of it? Only that and not do anything else?
Yes to both. So you can set up scheduled reports and set up an email alert to anyone in the list, or we can provide role-based login who's a view-only admin, so they can just view these operations but not do any policies or trigger any policies.
Okay.
And the RBAC roadmap, which is short term here, we do some high-level stuff now. It gets pretty granular, especially because MSPs are really demanding that. So that's a little bit short-term roadmap, though. Next.
Right, and VM Sprawl brings us to, we create these copies for test, for DR. The interesting thing is we track all these copies as well. So if you see there's a couple of jobs that are pending, these were VM copies that were created and they're sitting there, they're being used for testing or DR mode. We have actions for doing cleanup or promoting to production. So this is a VM that was generated. So I can say end this process, which means it'll clean up the clone. You're done with testing. It'll clean up all the clones and clean up all the VMs. Or you can promote it to production, which is in place data transfer from the clone copy to your production data store. So we keep track of the complete loop. You create the policies, create the snapshots, reuse these policies, and once you're done with test, either clean up or promote to production.
Okay. I got a question from the Twitters. You're not integrated into any of at the application level into what's running in the VM yet, right? You're still treating each VM as a black box?
Correct.
Okay.
We're going to show you a little architecture and roadmap. We have the capabilities of doing, agent injection, right? So we still believe in agentless, right? So not deploying agents before you have to do something, but we'll give you some insight to that.
Right.
Yeah, that's the correct answer.
Just to recap on what we went through during the demo, the catalog process where it creates a baseline of all the data in your environment to do searching and analytics. The copy data workflows, it allows you to create advanced workflows for vault, mirror, local copies. The use data to bring up these copies in DR mode, test mode, or production mode. And finally, the data analytics with the powerful reporting and search capabilities. Any questions?
I've got a question, and when it comes back to the analytics of, you have the compliance option where you can dive into some compliance-related stuff.
Right.
And I mean, can you expand that, or do you not want to expand it? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with either way.
No, it's okay.
So the DPX protection compliance you have up there, right?
Right. So the DPX protection compliance is specifically for our data protection product.
Oh, okay. Okay.
There are other compliance. So there's a protection compliance from a NetApp perspective and a VMware perspective.
But so compliance, we're not thinking. That's where, since it's got the analytics part, we're not talking PII, credit card, social security number data, because you're not cracking files and then indexing the metadata and index data inside of them. You're just going at the very high level today.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't think there's 17.4a compliance either.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, what do we do? Where do we go from this, right? So one way is, do we go into analytics or e-discovery, or think of all the different tools you can use. What we are good at now is just like a test dev for analytics.
Sure.
Giving whatever application you want, that your choice of e-discovery or whatnot, access to data, what it looked like an hour ago, and refresh that. That's what we do today. Now the key thing is, do we want to go into the other spaces? Most likely not. You'll see us go more into the application to make sure we can get some consistency, so we can use the copies, like RAC. You can see what the obvious ones, Oracle RAC, a couple other ones that will do some injection, so we can get the consistency. But we probably won't go in e-discovery or deep file analytics or security. But we're a pretty good way to get those applications.
Enable those applications. And then that's why I want to draw the line of, if you do that, that's great. Then we have bundle it with the rest of them. But if you don't do that, then I don't even have to think about in that context and focus on it being a really good product for the things it does.
Yep. And if you focus on that, that's very accurate in our short-term roadmap.
Cool.